After reviewing the homework, it looks like a lot of students were having problems with correcting entries, so I thought I would review those with you so you could get a better handle on how to approach a correcting entries problem. You're more than likely going to see these on your quiz as well as your exam. So if you will look on page 124 at problem 3-4A, I would like to review this problem with everybody. Number 1 says an $800 purchase of store supplies for cash was recorded as a purchase of office supplies for cash. Okay, so I think the best way to approach one of these entries is to just write down somewhere the way the original entry looked. This is the incorrect entry. We debited office supplies and credited cash, and we should have debited store supplies and credited cash. So we need to figure out which side of the entry is correct, which one is incorrect, and then fix the side that's incorrect. So the cash credit is correct because we did pay cash for the supplies, but they were actually store supplies, not office supplies. So we're going to have to get rid of this debit to office supplies for 800. And the way you get rid of a debit is you credit it. So we'll come down and credit office supplies. Okay, and we're going to credit it for the amount we originally debited it for. Okay, now we need a debit for this journal entry. Okay, so we're going to put in the account that should have been debited to start with. In this case, it should have been store supplies. So we will debit the store supplies account for 800. So now we have corrected this incorrect journal entry. Cash stayed where it was. Office supplies was removed with the credit, and store supplies was put in its place as the debit. So let's move to number 2. A $1,000 credit purchase of store supplies was recorded as a cash purchase. So the original and incorrect entry would have been debit to store supplies and credit to cash, when it should have been a purchase on account. So it would have been a debit to store supplies and a credit to accounts payable. So store supplies is correct. We're not going to bother that account. We want to fix the credit. So cash was credited for 1,000 incorrectly. So we're going to come down here and debit cash for 1,000. And for the credit, we're going to put what should have been there to begin with. It should have been accounts payable for 1,000. Okay, so the debit to cash will remove this credit to cash. It'll zero it out. Store supplies will stay where it is because it was correct, and we've now added accounts payable as the credit. Okay, let's look at number 3. The owner of the business, Susan Long, used a company check to pay a personal utility bill of $95. The payment had been recorded and posted as a debit to utilities expense. So this was a personal expense. It should not have been recorded as a business expense. It should have been debited to drawing. So in this original incorrect entry, the utilities expense is incorrect, cash is correct. So we need to work on getting rid of the utilities expense debit. So to do that, we're going to credit utilities expense for the $95, and we're going to put the account in its place that should have been there to start with. So that would have been Susan Long Drawing. Okay, so our correcting entry zeroes out the debit to utilities expense, and puts the correct account drawing in its place. Cash was not touched because cash was the correct credit. Okay, let's look at number 4. In this one, we have an amount that's incorrect. It says a $1,500 purchase of equipment on credit was recorded as $15,000 in both accounts. Okay, so the entry would have been debit equipment, credit accounts payable, and then an incorrect amount of $15,000 was put in there. So to correct this entry, we've got to bring the amounts down. So if I've added a debit to equipment for $15,000, in order to bring it down, I need to credit equipment for the difference of between $15,000 and $1,500. So I believe that's $13,500. So if we debit equipment for $15,000 and then credit it for $13,500, then the difference is $1,500, and that's the amount that we actually want in that equipment account. Okay, accounts payable has a credit of $15,000. We need to bring it down by $13,500 as well. So we're going to debit accounts payable for $13,500. So we're not changing our accounts here. We're just trying to lower the balance that we originally entered there. Okay, let's look at number 5. Let me add some more lines here. Okay, on number 5, a collection of $500 from credit customers was recorded as a debit to the cash account and a credit to the fees earned account. Okay, so this was actually a collection on account, not a new revenue. So the cash side is correct, but we put it in the fees earned originally, and it should have been a credit to accounts receivable. So the cash is fine. We won't bother with the cash account. What we need to do is remove this credit to fees and put accounts receivable in its place. And in order to do that, we debit fees earned to zero out the $500 credit that we had previously put there. And then we're going to credit accounts receivable, which should have been the credit to begin with. So now, after this adjusting or correcting entry, we still have the debit to cash for $500, but we've removed the credit to fees with the debit to fees, and we've placed accounts receivable in the credit position. Correcting entries can be challenging, so if you're still having problems with those, feel free to give me a call. My number is 588-2596.